This is the OTB Network.
And as they turn for home, it is Rags to Riches in front. Tough Tiz is battling her into the final furlong. And Lear's Princess charging hard on the outside. And the Belmont winner digs down. On the outside, Lear's Princess has overtaken Rags to Riches, who fights on as they come down to the line. But Lear's Princess has won. Lear's Princess has defeated Rags to Riches by a neck.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. Along with my colleague Mike Veach, the racing columnist with the Saratogian, I'm Mark Cassano, welcoming you to this morning's September 22nd edition of the show. And over the next 90 minutes, well, we'll get things kicked off with a topical discussion period in which we will chat about the passing of one of the grand ladies of the turf. The results are in from the trial of Mario Sclafani and Braulio Baeza, and we will talk with Mr. Baeza's attorney, Mr. Paul Darrow Hanessian. A little later on, we'll welcome in our other guest, Mr. Kieran McLaughlin, who comes off a terrific weekend, as well as local owner Don Lucarelli, who hopes to have a terrific Saturday with Octave in this afternoon's $750,000 cotillion at Philadelphia Park. Our stakes recap will be highlighted or low-lighted, depending on your point of view, with last Saturday's Gazelle. So all of that and much, much more. If you stay with us, settle in, relax over the next 90 minutes, for this is our final official show of summer. And now that I've, fully depressed myself,
well,
I now turn it over to the man who made two very, very intelligent choices last weekend. He decided to wager a cigar against Rags to Riches, and he decided not to wager a cigar against Shakespeare.
I know my turf horses.
2 for 2.
I know my turf horse. Well, summer's holding on to the real bitter end this year. So the weather's spectacular. For me, the Gazelle is not a highlight, and we'll talk more about it during the race, but I took no pleasure in collecting anything from Mark against his great lady, and we'll go into it more in detail. I'm very, very sorry that she came out of that race and she's done for the year. She's really a great modern-day filly. I won't, however, take anything away from a career best effort by Lear's Princess, who's just been doing wonderfully all year. And as I said to Mark last year, I'm really a pretty simple handicapper. It was just an attachment I formed when Karen invited me to her final workout before the Alabama. She is a growing, quick, leggy filly, and she's really in a good mood right now, and it was a good day, but not for Rags to Riches. Not happy about that at all, Mark.
So we'll talk about the Gazelle a little bit later on. We will answer a couple of emails, and we will let you know where Street Sense will make his next start, the penultimate start to his career. But we begin this morning's program. One of the grand ladies of the turf has died. Martha Gary died this past Monday following heart surgery. She was 88. In a moment, Michael's going to talk to you about her. And when he does, you're going to be watching her most famous horse, Forgo, in Mrs. Gary's favorite race, the 1976 Marlboro Cup, an amazing performance where he snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. Michael, she was one of the grand ladies of the turf.
Martha Gary is, this is the genuine article. When you say that a person is a sportswoman, this is her defined. This is what it really means. We don't have enough time today if we devoted all 90 minutes to what she gave to thoroughbred racing. There's the thing that she gave to thoroughbred racing, the great, the immortal Forgo. She also raced some pretty good horses called Anti-Mame and French Colonial. But it goes beyond that. If you know Martha Gary, you know someone who was low-key, very, very much on the what's best for racing side throughout her life. We saw it at Saratoga when everyone knew he was going to struggle on the slop at the Whitney, and yet she still raced him because, in her words, they came out to see Forgo, and we're going to show them Forgo. This particular race, this is the 76 Marlboro Cup, Craig?
Yes.
This is phenomenal, him getting up here in the last stride. I remember this for a couple reasons. I was a Forgo fan. This is one of the last great weight carriers. But I was actually, Mark, at Apple Ridge Country Club in North Bergen, New Jersey, is where I watched this race. I had played golf with a friend of mine from racing down there, and we got done in time to watch this in the clubhouse. And I was disbelieving that he had, in fact, won the race. And this is one of those personal ensign distaff moments,
Sure.
this particular finish. But much more about Martha. She is a past president. She was the chairman emeritus of the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame upon her death. She was probably one of the biggest givers to the museum in history. For example, Mark, she would come to Saratoga during the off-season and inspect the work that she helped out with so much, the capital campaigns that led to the expansion of the museum in Saratoga Springs. When you're our age, you remember the lone single Georgian brick building. It's become quite a destination in Saratoga. There's one of the people behind it. She would come up on several occasions in the winter to look at the architectural plans for the facade and the expansion into the gift shop that's done so well by Kathy McGuire today. But we and racing have lost a tremendous supporter of the sport. Tremendous.
I saw her in the paddock at Saratoga. It may have been Hall of Fame Day. I simply don't remember. I do remember I was chatting with Barbara Livingston, and Barbara, doesn't miss a thing. And she saw Mrs. Gary, and that really is sad. In the 76 Marlboro Cup, Forgo carried 137 pounds. How many trainers in this era would run their horse under 137 pounds? He nailed Honest Pleasure, who was a champion.
Tremendous runner.
Honest Pleasure carried 119 pounds. In those days, weight made a difference. The passing of Martha Gary at the age of 88. And Street Sense, shown here in a workout earlier this year at Churchill Downs, worked twice over the past week. Last Sunday, the Derby and Travers hero went an easy half mile in 48 3 breezing. Then he came back on Wednesday and worked 5/8 in 1 minute and 3/5 breezing. The splits for that work: 25 2 to the quarter, 49 2 to the half, galloped out 3/4 in 13 2, and 7/8 in 127. Carl Navsger just called us back. The next start for Street Sense will be the Kentucky Cup Classic. Carl said it is an easy ship from Churchill and an easy ship back. He will likely meet Hard Spun in that race. And Hard Spun's owner, Rick Porter, has been clamoring for another encounter with Street Sense. Good luck to Rick. So Street Sense, we were hoping he would come for the Jockey Club Gold Cup. I didn't think he would. And it's the Kentucky Cup Classic.
Now, I've got a question for you. Did not Hard Spun win? Was the Turfway race the one he won at the end of last winter? Has he got a big victory over that?
It was at the beginning of this year, wasn't it?
What's their race? Theirs is the
lanes. It's changed so many times.
Yeah, but it's the mile and an eighth. The Turfway is the one he won, so he's got a victory over that.
Yes.
Carl's going back to an artificial surface, which doesn't bother him preparing for big races at all.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be very interesting.
Okay, and that may be another cigar bet next week.
It might be.
All right.
It might be. I feel guilty about this, Mark.
And how about news on a Canadian? Jambalaya, shown here upsetting the Arlington Million in his last start, is done for the year, sidelined with a bone bruise, and the ranks of the North American marathon turfers becomes that much thinner.
This is too bad. He's a double grade 1 winner. The Million is one of the pivotal races for the championship. And earlier this year, he won the Gulfstream Park Breeders' Cup. I think that's an 11 furlong race, but it's a grade 1. Mark is really right about this. North American top turf runners going long. Wow, it looks like we're at the Mercy again.
The Breeders' Cup turf is there for the taking. Remember Caves Valley? a colt who's named for a famous golf course, by the way. He broke his maiden in his debut at Saratoga back on August 17th. He went wire to wire, winning at 5.5 furlongs by 7.5 lengths for Mike Trombetta. Well, last Monday, he stretched out to a mile in the Whirling Ash at Delaware. He's number 2. He's on the fence in behind rivals. Here he is coming through along the inside. Now, the interesting thing here is they picked this race to try to teach him the rate.
Okay.
Because in his debut, he led in fractions of 21-3 and 45. Here, they went 25-1 and 49-4. They wanted to teach him to sit behind rivals. He won by a desperate nose at 2-5. So it just goes to show you what goes into, and Mike Trombetta is a fine trainer, but it goes to show you the thinking of some trainers. Let's face it, most of the time those 5.5 furlong baby races are won by the most precocious horses, the speediest horses, and Caves Valley drowned them that afternoon at Saratoga. But when you have to teach them to rate and conserve their speed and sit behind horses, sometimes it's pretty tough.
And that happens exactly, and it shows you how difficult it is to bring a horse to a big race, which is why, and I'm not really changing subjects here, which is why I'm so impressed at what Majestic Warriors learned in just 2 starts, maybe some of it by happenstance, but Trombetta is a very, very good trainer, and I'm going to be interested to see what this guy does next as we get to the juvenile.
Congratulations to jockey Randy Meyer, who scored career victory number 4,000 last Sunday at Arlington Park. The 52-year-old Meyer became only the 53rd rider in history to reach the 4,000 win plateau. That's a lot of wins.
Man,
that's a terrific, terrific career. Now, the trial of former NYRA employees Mario Sclafani and Braulio Baeza, who you see here, has ended in Ballston Spa. Judge Jerry Scarano dismissed the 291-count indictment against Sclafani, the former clerk of scales, and his assistant Baeza. And joining us this morning live via telephone is the attorney for Mr. Baeza, Mr. Paul Darohanessian. Paul, Mark Cassano, and Mike Veach welcoming you to Down the Stretch.
Thank you very much, Mark and Mike.
Good morning, Paul.
Good to be here.
What were the key factors in Judge Scarano tossing the case before it got to the jury?
I think the key point that led to its final demise and dismissal was the fact that jockey weights were on scales that weren't calibrated, but there were several factors that led up to that. And I would say the overriding aspect was a failure of investigators to understand the rules of jockey weights and then trying to ascertain what those weights were. And even at trial, it was clear that they didn't understand what the weights should be at the way out or the way in.
So, Paul, was the prosecution confused or uninformed about the fact that some of the equipment that the riders wear and use does not go into the official assigned weight?
I think that was a key, that they did not understand that when they were doing the investigation. And let me give you an example, a major issue which the grand jury was never told, and which they didn't point out at trial. We pointed it out, and the state wagering and racing board verified this at trial when they were called as the prosecution witness, has to do with the safety vest. The jockey wears a safety vest at the time that he or she weighs out and is given 2 pounds allowance for that. And by rule, the jockey isn't supposed to wear the vest at weigh out, but the representative state wagering and racing board pointed out that at New York tracks and other tracks, there's just not enough time for the jockey to take it off, put it back on. So they give that 2 pound allowance, and that 2 pound allowance is a number that's in the regulations. So that right away you have a 2 pound difference with the program weight. And after the indictment, jockeys were quite upset, and there was a meeting, I think down at Belmont, and they said that this should be explained to the racing public, and that's why now you see it in the program that if in the program it says 116, that the jockey would weigh out at 118, for example. So that was one example. And a bigger problem was the weigh-in process at the end of the race, at which point the jockey is carrying a helmet, goggles, an overgirth, has mud, has sweat, has dirt on the equipment as well as his clothing and body, and that doesn't get allotted. And in Saratoga, when they tried to assess the jockey weights at weigh-in, they made no allowance for any of those factors, whether it was equipment, whether it was sweat, whether it was mud and dirt. And compounded by the fact that the scales they were using were very old. In fact, my client had used them, back in the 70s when he rode at Saratoga. And believe it or not, they were never calibrated to the weights of the jockeys for some reason in Saratoga. And even when calibrated, you had to look at them directly head-on to get an accurate reading, and the investigators didn't do that. And there was always a 1 pound rate of error. So that the numbers they were using were off for a variety of reasons.
Paul, obviously, the prosecution's lack of understanding in certain aspects of the sport was quite detrimental to their case. Did it surprise you that they came in, I don't know, is uninformed a proper term? Did that surprise you?
It does surprise me in a case of this magnitude when you're bringing such serious charges that affect not only the two individuals on trial, but several very prominent jockeys. There were 5 jockeys that were named as unindicted co-conspirators, some of the top jockey names like Robbie Alvarado and Cornelio Velasquez, for example, Jose Santos. There were 2 other jockeys whose names were mentioned as riding overweight. So you would think that given the breadth of the allegations and the amount of people affected by it, and that it really would be affecting the entire sport, that they would have brought in or been more aware of the fine points of racing, particularly when it came to weights. And at trial, I asked each of the investigators whether they, as a result of the investigation or their own personal interest, knew much about racing and knew the jockeys' names, for example. Did it mean anything? And I was surprised that none of them had any knowledge of racing that they had picked up either through the case investigation or because they were interested in horse racing.
Paul, since the scale itself was so key in this case, why didn't the prosecution check to make certain that the scale was calibrated properly?
That's a great question, and the example I use, or the analogy, is radar. When cops go out every day to do their radar, they got to check it in the beginning of the shift and the end of the shift. Same thing with breathalyzers. They have to be calibrated. And the only attempted calibration was done by NYRA once at the beginning of the meet, and again, it wasn't even done to the jockeys' weights. And even though they had the opportunity to do so, they didn't. And again, there's really no good answer as to why they didn't. As I said, in many other areas of law, that's what you'd expect them to do, even in a routine speeding case.
Paul, a good friend of mine is an attorney, and he told me that Judge Scarano, being a conservative Republican, most of his cases do get to the jury. Did it surprise you that it didn't get that far? Were you confident after seeing and hearing what the prosecution had that this wasn't going to go very far?
I was confident in the beginning of the case, and more so as we approached trial, that our clients would be cleared, and I wasn't sure how it was going to happen. I was surprised that it occurred even before the prosecution's case was terminated. We had made a motion to throw out all of the Saratoga counts because of the calibration issue, but frankly, you don't know, and that's why you have many different approaches that you want to take to challenging the case. And I thought it would happen either at the end of their case or in the hands of the jury. And in speaking to jurors later, and their comments that one actually contacted us, what they were surprised was the case got as far as it did. And they were surprised by the amount of resources that went into this case, which included surveillance and wiretaps. They would have half a dozen investigators every day at the Saratoga racetrack trying to track down not only jockey weights, but the movements of the 2 clerks of scales. And it just, that didn't make sense to them at all, why this energy went into this case. And again, The only surprise they had is that it took so long for the case to get dismissed.
Paul, Mr. Sclafani and Mr. Baez are also charged downstate at Belmont and Aqueduct. Will they be tried downstate?
That would be very, very difficult to do, and I think given the problems and weaknesses of the case, I doubt they'll try to do that, and I think there's certain legal barriers that will make that close to impossible to do. So I don't expect that at all.
It's been about 2 years since the men lost their jobs, they lost their livelihood, they lost their reputations. What can they do about that?
Well, that's something that they're evaluating right now, and one of the concerns that my client had was he wanted to go back to racing, and number one for his future is he had been offered jobs while this was pending, and just because of the fact that he was indicted kept him away from certain jobs in racing, and I think that's what he found one of the most frustrating aspects of this case and disappointing was just that mere allegation before he could have a trial that he had to wait 3 years for, that he couldn't do anything about that. So whether or not there's some legal remedies here is something that he, as well as Mr. Sclafani, are going to stop and think about before they do it, and I think they just want to make sure they know what they want and they know what their legal options are, and that has not been fully decided.
Paul, those of us in our age group remember Braulio Baeza as just a great, great rider. What are your client's emotions at this time? Is relief too weak a word?
Yeah, relief is part of it, and just to echo what you said, I too, growing up, remember Braulio as a great jockey, and I found it very, unusual and striking to me that here I was representing somebody who was a sports hero when I was growing up that I would read about in the paper. I would actually go through when in high school and I was following the races and who the jockeys were, and I knew him very well. So when I had the chance to represent him, I mean, first of all, that was striking to me, and then like you say, one of the things I found out about him is that he's tremendously respected.
Yes, he is.
And so many people supported him.
Yep.
And they supported him, not just psychologically, but like were willing to come in, some of the top names in racing. And that said a lot to me. And I think when you talk about relief, you have to understand he felt humiliated by this. He was at a racetrack in Pennsylvania where security escorted him off the track. And he was just there to attend it. And it was just by virtue of this indictment that they didn't want him on the track. And to someone whose life and identity revolves around the sport, as he told me, that's as devastating as any conviction is. And that's why, as one of the reasons this case went to trial is, some people can, plead they don't care as long as they don't go to jail. To him, it had nothing that was only part of it. He had his reputation and his identity. And, unless he had total vindication, and he was not willing unless there was total vindication. So he didn't agree to anything. He wouldn't agree to anything. And this was his only opportunity. And, some people are hollering and screaming before trial. He's not like that. He went and he abided by the process. And I think it takes a while to get over this. It's not like a light switch that you can just turn it off and leave the room.
Well, Paul, first of all, congratulations, and thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. We appreciate it very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul Darrow Hanessian, ladies and gentlemen, the attorney for Braulio Baeza. He and Mario Sclafani cleared of all charges. Here upstate, we'll have to see if the AG's office decides to prosecute them downstate. Some of you loyal viewers of this show may remember that shortly after this was announced, and we've got to be going back about 3 years now, don't we?
Right.
I would say that's pretty close. We had on a representative of then Attorney General Spitzer to talk about this case. And I remember saying to myself, and folks, please, I know very little about the law, but common sense said, these guys don't understand certain aspects of racing. And apparently in the end, that killed the prosecution's case. So congratulations, Mario Sclafani and Braulio Baeza. A couple of emails to read for you this morning, beginning with a multi-topic email from Steve.
And Steve, it's good to hear from you, and we do know you, Steve, and I'm glad you took the time to drop us this note. Dear Mark and Mike, no other racing association is a package deal where all funds are commingled and the most profitable must support the least. Steve is referring to the arrangement of NYRA. Within 10 years, the gap between Saratoga and the two downstates will be even wider, according to projections. Yonkers VLTs are underperforming, and the aqueduct projection scares people. Saratoga was the VLT best bet, and good for the harness horsemen there. Switching a little bit topics, Del Mar is part of no package and is by no means a disaster. Their franchise with San Diego County mandates capital developments there, including the front side. They had to build a new grandstand for their fans. Saratoga needs the infield tunnel to restore the tradition that was abolished with the non-traditional carousel after the 1984 season. Photos of early Saratoga show lots of people on the infield. I was one of them. If Saratoga is special and North America's premier meet, steps must be taken to specifically ensure that, and so that comfortable growth can occur to prevent stagnation through customer frustration. But specific concerns for Saratoga must be articulated. The wheel change nothing is a very convenient excuse for nothing more than maximum financial exploitation with minimal front-side investment. That's bad business. Without front-side customers, there are no backside horsemen. Arthur Carney, he's referring to a former mayor of Saratoga, went on his own to Governor W. Averill Harriman to ensure 24 uncontested dates at Saratoga guaranteed in the franchise. Any franchise, meaning a new one, requires much more for Saratoga than mere guarantee of the current 36 dates. That would be giving the best away to the rest, with the best fans paying all the bills. The best fans deserve nothing less than the best opportunity to see live horses with maximum comfort and respect. Remember that Barry Schwartz spoke of both the infield tunnel first and the clubhouse extension next, where the At the Rail tent now occupies prime trackside real estate for a very small number of patrons, whereas a clubhouse extension would benefit many. Thanks for a great show and forum for fans to express opinions, even if they be controversial ones. Let's look at all facets of our most important racing issues equally and without any sacred cows. Maybe like Mayor Carney's, some of them are vanguard ones, meaning issues. Thanks so much, and thanks so much to you, Steve, for a thoughtful letter.
Thank you, Steve. You know, in some historic photos, you might see my partner in the infield. You know, when Upset won, you might see him in the infield.
I'll get even.
I'm only going to say this. I'll say this one more time. I think it would be a huge mistake if we did not have the not-for-profit system here in New York, and I think it could be a borderline disaster if we had 3 different entities running the 3 different racetracks. David Wimbush is a local young man who has been in the Army in Iraq now for too long. And that has nothing to do with politics, because I don't even like politics, but he's been there too long, and so have our other men and women. What has helped David over the years is horse racing, and it's probably helped him keep his sanity. And he talked about Saratoga coming and going very, very fast, and for him it was a good thing because it meant that it put him 6 weeks closer to being back home. He sent his condolences to me on the loss of Rags to Riches. He talked about the wonderful performance in the King's Bishop of Hard Spun, and David's feelings are that Hard Spun might consider the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile at 1.70 miles over the Classic. He wants to know what's going on with the New York State Legislature regarding the future of NYRA, as just about everybody does. And the state Senate has scheduled 3 more hearings. Can you imagine that?
Well,
3 more
David,
hearings?
actually that you've raised this, I'm going to try to email you my column tomorrow, a fairly lengthy one, is about this very topic. And as I possibly said to Mark last week, I'm not sure that the word process applies anymore. There's a political fight going on. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
We need more hearings. The next one is September 27th. And David said, my Yankees are making me proud. We have a lot of fun discussing horse racing on a weekly basis. And you folks, obviously, if you're watching, to some degree, enjoy racing. But we kind of take it for granted. You know, it's there 5 days a week downstate. It's here 6 days a week at Saratoga. In this case, with a young man halfway around the world, It's incredibly meaningful to him that he's able to take his mind off the horrible things that are happening half a world away. So David, thank you very,
David.
very much for your email. And for those of you who would like to correspond with us here at Down the Stretch, here are the ways in which you can do that. Through the United States Postal Service, Down the Stretch, Mark and Mike, Capital District OTB 510 Smith, Schenectady 12305, or electronically at viewermail at capitalotb.com. I'm just happy that I was able to pronounce Paul Darrell
Yes, you did well.
That was pretty
You did
good.
well.
All right, we're up to our first break on this morning's September 22nd edition. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, it's off to the races, and we're going to begin with the Gazelle. As we go to this break, last Sunday in New York, the Ashley T. Cole for State Breds. You know, basically the same group of State Breds. The 2-1 favorite was number 2, Red Zipper. Number 5, Dave, who I liked at Saratoga, and who ran lousy, to be perfectly blunt, at Saratoga.
Okay.
He was the second choice at 7-2. A new face in here, and I thought he had a heck of a chance in here because of the pace scenario, was number 8, Albasha.
Oh,
I gave him a
Angel.
real
Okay,
nice
yeah.
chance at a pretty square price. So we'll take a look at the Ashley T. Cole going to the break. Michael and I will be back with our stakes recap right after these messages.
Distribution whittling away at the lead now. It's down to 3 lengths. Foreverness on the outside. Red Zipper at the hedge. 2.5 lengths back. And it's Papadar running along in fourth with a half mile to go. Band Rock and Spurred running together about 7 lengths from the lead. Then it's Dave and Papadar and Caramont. Beth Page Black trails the field. And around the far turn, Retribution, the lead is now only 3/4 of a length. Red Zipper's trying to come through on his inside. Foreverness is tailed off back running in third. Here's Band Rock who's running on the outside. Papada down toward the hedge, looking for a way through now. Alba Shah is there on the far outside. Now Red Zipper will come to the 8th pole with the lead. Nothing left for Retribution. Here's Papada who's driving hard now. On the far outside, Alba Shah is coming on, and so too Dave. Red Zipper, Alba Shah coming hard. Dave on the far outside, and Spurred. They're coming down to the line, and it's a blanket finish. Dave was there, so too was Alba Shah, and so too Spurred and Red Zipper.
I'm Barclay Tagg. I was the trainer of Funny Side who won the Kentucky Derby. And
You're watching
the
OTB television.
the OTB television network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark Asano. Our thanks go out to attorney Paul Darrow-Hanessian for
Yes.
having joined us this morning. And the Ashley T. Cole goes to Dave for some local owners
Indeed.
involved with a Parting Glass stable
Yeah.
and the 3 Colleen stable and Barclay Tagg and Alan Garcia as they nail Albasha in the last jump to win it. And it was a big day for Parting Glass. They won another race I think it was a New York bred allowance winner, Cute Cognac.
They had Cute Cognac go, and then 2 days later at Keeneland, if you did not know, they sold a Mr. Greeley colt for $260,000 in New York, bred and raised at the farm there. And I believe Tom told me that she's got a foal of this year. She's got a foal of this year by Tail of the Cat, and is back in foal to Grand Slam. So they've had a great early part of the week this year.
Congratulations to all the local owners
group, yes,
involved in beating me on the line in the Ashley T. Cole. All right, we begin our stakes recap in earnest. Last Saturday at Belmont Park, in my mind, a terribly disappointing crowd of under 10,000 turning out for the Gazelle, which marked the return of number 5 Rags to Riches. The first start in 98 days since her historic victory in the Belmont Stakes. The only threat in here to Rags to Riches could possibly come from number 1 Lear's Princess, who is adding blinkers after running second in the Alabama and the Coaching Club American Oaks. Now keep in mind, folks, as we watch Saturday's races at Belmont, there was a very strong wind in the face of the horses going down the backstretch, so that will impact the fractions. 2 things to keep an eye on here as the field turns for home and Rags to Riches and Lear's Princess run through the stretch. You will see Rags to Riches have trouble changing leads, and this is something she has not had trouble with in the past. And when she did change leads, she would lug in pretty badly. And Lear's Princess, who had had some trouble in her last 2 starts, switching back to the wrong lead late, ran much more professionally with blinkers. And in receipt of 7 pounds, with Rags to Riches being a short filly and subsequently being injured, Lear's Princess scored the first Grade 1 victory of her career with a half-length upset in the Gazelle.
Well, let's go on the lead contrast first, because after they leave the turn and under a very clever ride by Ibar, who gets her out here, you'll see Rags responding right there to the lead switch that Karen's been looking for. The second thing is, I thought the 7 pounds was in my favor. I thought the short horse was in my favor. And no filly has gone by Colt's gone by Rags to Riches when she's got the lead. I did not think anything was wrong at that point. I thought the conditions were in my favor. Subsequently, we very sadly learned that she suffered a fracture, a minor one, however. She's out for the year. I thought the conditions were there. Lear's Princess is a very, very improving filly. In fact, I think, Mark, she's about a half length from being unbeaten in her whole career. I don't know if you've got PPs there or not, but she didn't get going till late April, and she's really gone up the ladder big. Beautifully moving, leggy filly who just seemed to really get good late this spring for Kieran, and he decided to go to the blinkers to get that good lead switch, and she in fact did it at the proper time. But it's more bad news than good coming out of here, because I wanted to see Rags to Riches go on to the Breeders' Cup and have a chance maybe at having a couple of titles under her belt. But nonetheless, a noteworthy, if on a negative note, renewal of the ancient Gazelle.
Well, Lear's Princess really ran a superb race. There is absolutely no doubt that the blinkers helped her tremendously. She ran much more professionally through the final quarter mile. But Rags to Riches, and Todd said this himself earlier this year, that he didn't think she could get beat by a filly. Well, I don't think Todd did a very good job bringing her back. I think the Breeders' Cup looming in the future played a part in her getting beat here, because Todd felt that he could have her 80 to 90% in the Gazelle and she would still win and have plenty of room to move forward. Well, that unfortunately was not the case. Folks, she only got beat a half length and she tried very hard, but you know what? She only beat the third finisher, Tough Tiz's Sis, by 2 lengths, and she's a pole better than her. So that was very, very unfortunate in a lot of respects, and that takes nothing away from the effort of Lear's Princess, who really, I think the blinkers made a tremendous
Oh, I do too.
difference.
And if I'm not mistaken, on one of our summer interviews with Karen even brought it up, maybe before or after, especially after the Oaks, if I'm not mistaken. It's been on his mind, there's no doubt about it, but it made a tremendous difference, and she's she ran the race. He thought she had 2 races back, in my opinion.
A minute 47 and 4/5. Again, very strong wind against them going down the backstretch. But let's face it, the biggest story coming out of the Gazelle is not Lear's Princess winning it. Yeah. It was the injury to Rags to Riches, who suffered a hairline fracture of her right front pastern during, in all likelihood, during the running of the Gazelle. She is done for the year, but is scheduled to be back as a 4-year-old in 2008. And Michael Tabor, her major owner, has said all along, we plan on racing her as a 4-year-old. Now, she will get at least 6 weeks stall rest to allow that injury to heal. They'll take x-rays, you know, on a fairly regular basis to see how she's doing. Couple of questions coming out of the Gazelle. Has Rags to Riches done enough to capture the 3-year-old filly championship? Personally, I think so. She is 5 for 6 this year. The historic effort in winning the Belmont Stakes, she absolutely dominated the Kentucky Oaks, the Santa Anita Oaks, and her win in the Las Virgenes, if you watch this show and have listened to me, I told you that that was one of the most unbelievable victories I've ever seen, period, at Santa Anita. Now, if Lear's Princess, Octave, or Lady Joni wins the distaff, it could be a close vote, but I personally think Rags to Riches has done enough.
It should not be, and I'd be disappointed if it was, because, you know, I think Rags to Riches is so good. If she had won out this year, she would have been my list of 3 Horse of the Year contenders, and especially if Street Sense and Lawyer Ron had gone backwards on Breeders' Cup Day. But the key is she wins the Santa Anita Oaks in Kentucky, the Santa Anita Oaks in California, the Kentucky Oaks in Kentucky, and wins the Belmont Stakes. You got to be kidding me. She's 3-year-old filly champ. She's the 3-year-old filly champ. She's got my vote. She got it the day she won the Belmont Stakes. It's marvelous. I'm sorry she can't go out for the rest of the year and win those next 2. I think that much of her that I would consider her for the top honor if the other 2 leaders in some fashion just went backwards. I hope that doesn't happen for them. But for me, I hope it isn't close, Mark. I don't see how it can't be, really, you know.
Since the start of the Belmont Fall Meet, there have been a number of problems with horses.
Indeed.
Many trainers complaining that that racetrack is very hard. Now, to be fair, there are also many other trainers who discussed the fact that at Saratoga, where some folks were complaining, others were saying it was in the best condition they had seen. So you must understand, you cannot satisfy everybody. But in the little bit that I know about John Passero in dealing with him, I guess in a recent meeting, it was decided that the maintenance of the main track at Belmont will change a bit, that they will still seal it. And John Passero seals the racetracks every night, no matter if, you know, there's no rain in the forecast at all. But they will only roll the racetracks now if there's a significant threat of rain, hoping that that, you know, tempers the hardness of the racetrack. And I'm going to take you back. Remember when Rags to Riches was pulled up early in a workout by her exercise rider, Lauren Robson, and Lauren said, she just didn't feel right, and I had to protect her. That's when she was sent to New Bolton. Is it possible that Lauren Robson was right in feeling something that the x-rays simply didn't show? Is that possible?
I think it's possible, and I think it's possible that Rags was sending a message that day. And I understand that just a few days prior to the Saratoga meet, I understand there were concerns about the hardness of the main track when it opened up here too. So I don't think it's not possible at all. I mean, you know, if you stay with horses long enough, they don't verbalize, but they do things to let you know that something's off. And I wouldn't say it's impossible at all. It's too bad. She's a great one, and I hope she heals completely for next year.
I think Lady Joni and Lear's Princess and Octave and Panty Raid are all wonderful, wonderful 3-year-old fillies. But I remain convinced that Rags to Riches is on another planet. And I certainly hope she's able to make it back as a 4-year-old. All right, also on the Gazelle undercard, 2-year-old males went postward in the Futurity. And the favorite, as expected, number 6, Kodiak Cowboy. Winner of the Saratoga Special in the Bashford Manor. He was 85 cents to the dollar. The second choice at 2.5 to 1 from Mr. Pletcher, number 4, the Leopard. $2.5 million son of Stormcat, coming off a maiden win at Saratoga. And the third choice, and watch him break, is number 3, Tail of a Coddy. Tail of a Coddy is going to hit the side of the gate. There he is last. As they break from the gate, he's going to break awkwardly. Big maiden winner in his debut. I thought his debut was absolutely terrific, and he ran a sneaky good second to Reddy's Image in the Sanford, but he came down with some foot problems. And Barkley Tagg, you know, we've talked about Kieran McLaughlin, what a great weekend he had last weekend. Barkley Tagg had a pretty good one himself. Barkley had been battling foot problems with Tail of a Coddy, but he gave him some time. He had been working very, very well. Here, as Mythical Pegasus and the Leopard are going to set the fractions, 22-4, 46-2, and remember, that's against a strong wind down the backstretch. The favorite, Kodiak Cowboy, going to set a beautiful trip, third on the outside, but A-Bar Koa and Tail of a Coddy sitting that inside in behind trip. A-Bar is going to await room. When Tail of a Coddy finds it, he's going to run away to a good-looking one-length score over the favorite, and Tail of a Coddy moving forward at a very important time.
This is so startling and aggressive, this inside move by a guy who don't like the gate too much. He really does go back to his maiden and improves upon it. Had a trouble journey in the Sanford as well. But this is really one of the better performances this year, geared down at the end. And he comes from a family that has a really good blend, Mark, of speed and stamina. This family is of Alabama Stakes winner Maple Jinsky, who also happens to be the same close family of sprint champion filly Gold Beauty. He showed both of those dimensions here. He goes along easy, but boy, when he's asked to run, he opens up with a startling burst of speed and then gears down at the end. Barkley's got some really, really good 2-year-olds this year. As a matter of fact, he's running in a very impressive New York bred in the Vanguard tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be interesting to see the pass that these all take to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, because you know, he's got 2, I think, that at this point deserve a good look. This guy here just gives me the impression there's a lot of room for improvement, and overcame a lot to do this most impressively.
Well, earlier in the show, we took a look at Caves Valley, an impressive maiden winner sprinting at Saratoga, having his problems sitting behind rivals. Well, Tail of a Coddy was coming off 2 sprint races. He had drawn the inside post in both of them. And here, sitting in behind rivals. Now, while A-Bar had to search for room, take a look at Tail of a Coddy. He's still very comfortable in there. And when A-Bar angles him to the fence here, he's going to ride him hard until about the 70-yard pole, and then he's really going to ease up on him. This was a nice performance. You know, Kodiak Cowboy's a nice colt, probably the second level, and he just dominated Kodiak Cowboy, and all the rest. Barkley's got to be thrilled with that performance. 122-1. If the foot problems are behind him, this colt could be a major factor on Breeders' Cup.
This is interesting. I kind of hope he is for Barkley. There's some really weird futurity Breeders' Cup history. You know how many have won both. The answer is 0.
No.
They haven't. Okay, we're talking about 25 years. But here's something even more where, folks, I was flush with the victory of winning a bet last Saturday, so I looked up weird and interesting facts. So I'm going to throw in at Mark. There have been whatever number of the editions of the Futurity. It comes out to 66 horses in the Futurity who finished 1, 2, 3. Now, not all of them ran in the Breeders' Cup, but only one of them made an impact in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and it was Chief's Crown. He was second in history to the rest of it. It's a nothing race for the Breeders'. Not so with another race we're going to look at this morning.
Well, next up, and by the way, 122 and a 5th for the 2-year-old males. Keep that in mind as we now take a look at 2-year-old fillies. Go posted in the matron, and the 17-10 favorite is number 3, Proud Spell. 2 for 2 at Delaware Park for trainer Larry Jones. The co-second choices in here at 3-1. Number 2, Syriana Song, who showed all kinds of speed at Saratoga, going 5 furlongs. Here, stretching out to 7 furlongs, no speed at all. Give me a quick explanation of that, would you please?
No, are you asking
None.
me? What are you kidding
No
me?
speed.
She ran too fast to Saratoga.
Nothing.
There it is.
0. And number 6, Armonk, a maiden, 22-2 and 45-4, meaning that the early fractions in the matron were faster than the futurity, as Miss Red Delicious and Marin's Meadow going to set the pace, relaxing in 5th right now, the eventual winner, Proud Spell. She's going to rally off the turn and go on to a very handy 4 1/4 length victory over Armonk, the maiden, who was 2nd, Dagger, who was 32-1 and should have been, was 3rd. I think it was a nice effort by the winner, but I have no idea what she was beating.
No, I don't know. I liked her this day, and she ran just the way she had in her other victory. She gets a nice outside trip, and she runs with a good sustained kick. Don't know what she's beating here. 3 for 3 now for trainer Larry Jones. He's going to go directly to the Breeders' Cup with this daughter of first crop sire Proud Citizen. I will say this, the matron and the Breeders' Cup juvenile fillies have a completely different relationship. 3 or 4 of them, like Meadow Star and Storm Flag Flying and Folklore, have won it off the matron. And having looked up the crazy stat for the futurity, I did it for the matron mark, and about half of the matron fillies hit the board. And so there's a good connection there. They're going to cross the river to go to Monmouth. But I guess her class test will come on the biggest day of racing on October 27th. Her day is the 27th at Monmouth Park. But so far, for as far as he's concerned, she's done everything Larry Jones has asked.
Without question. When you compare the fractions of the matron to the futurity, and I've done this every year, we've run these races on the show.
I seem to remember that, yeah.
This is the strangest comparison I can ever remember.
Yeah.
The first quarter of the matron was 22-2. It was 2/5 faster than the futurity. The half was 45-4. 3/5 faster than the futurity. 3 quarters in 11-1. 4/5 slower than the futurity. And the final time of 1:24 1/5, 2 full seconds slower than the futurity. That is weird. Very fast early and incredibly slow late. But the winner was impressive. Again, I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot behind her, but congratulations to Larry Jones. We are up to our next break on our September 22nd edition of Down the Stretch. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, we're going to go to Canada.
You know,
for a couple of races on Sunday.
Hold on. Go ahead, finish your spiel.
And
I got something to say.
Then we'll welcome in our second guest, Mr. Kieran McLaughlin.
If present trends continue, in about a week, the Canadian dollar will be stronger than the American dollar. They'll all be going to Canada for those races.
I want everybody to go to Canada.
Well,
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Going to this break, and as our director Dan Hayes said to me earlier, this is the $16 million break. We are going to take a look at race 4 last Saturday at Belmont, the maiden contest at 3/4 of a mile, which featured the world record holder, the $16 million, the Green Monkey. He is number 4 in here, and he was 45 cents to the dollar. So we'll take a look at the debut of the Green Monkey going to the break, and Michael and I will be back with more stakes action right after these messages.
And they're off. 6:13 breaks on top. Bujagali is there. The Green Monkey's under a hustling ride right from the start and comes out running 3rd. And then it's Holaben running in 4th. On the far outside, Secret Design is 5th. And the early trailer is Ramodi into the far turn. And it's 6:13 the leader. Bujagali right alongside. Not far behind, it's the Green Monkey running 3rd. Beyond a quarter in 22 seconds flat. The pace very hot here. 6:13. Bujagali knocking heads on the lead. Johnny Velasquez is still after the Green Monkey, and they are still running 3rd on the outside. Ramodi moves through an opening on the inside 4th. Coming to the quarter pole. It's 6:13. 2-length lead. Ramodi is 2nd, and the Green Monkey is sputtering at the top of the stretch. Off the turn, into the stretch, and it is Ramodi the leader. Ramodi now in front. 6:13 is 2nd. It's 6 lengths back to a desperate the Green Monkey and alongside Secret Design, and they're coming down to the finish, and it will be Ramodi. Ramodi is the winner by 4 on the line. 6:13 is 2nd, and the Green Monkey checks in a disappointing 3rd.
This is the Off Track Betting Television Network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left, I'm Mark Asano. The maiden race last Saturday goes to Ra Modi.
Very well done. Very well done. Excellent.
For Hall of Famers Bill Mott and Kent DeSormo, between Paul Derohanasian and Ra Modi. This is a tough morning. The Green Monkey, third, beaten 7 lengths, as you saw. He was ridden pretty hard early on by Johnny Velasquez. But don't worry too much. They did recoup $5,200 of the $16 million purchase price. And one final note on last Saturday at Belmont. With the return of, and I feel very safe and secure in making this statement, one of the 2 most popular horses in North America, Rags to Riches, coming back to the races, they drew 7,361. On Sunday, the major action was north of the border at one of my partner's favorite venues, Woodbine. We're going to begin with $1 million Woodbine Mile, a field of 14, and the favorite, number 3 Shakespeare, making his second start in 2 years. Coming off a big return in an allowance race at Saratoga, he was the $1.95 to the $1 favorite. The co-second choices at 5-1. Number 9, Remarkable News. He would set the pace in here. 23-4. Not a terribly fast first quarter, but then they picked it up. 46-3 and 109-4. And number 5, Kip DeVille, who seemed to be kind of rounding back into form off his okay third in the Oceanport and last. Number 11, Artmaster, who Shakespeare beat at Saratoga, was 6-1. And Michael's Canadian, number 4, Sky Conqueror, was 10-1. Remarkable News would set the base, attended by Galantis. Kip DeVille was forwardly placed. All the while, Shakespeare, under Garrett Gomez, would ride the rails and would use an inside run to come from far back and win, edging away by a length in 1:33 2/5. Enter stage left Shakespeare in another wonderful performance.
This is really one of the stories of the year. I mean, it's a wonderful time. The stakes record is 132-3 up there. This story of Kieran training him and getting him back to do the things he's done after almost a 2-year layoff is just really wonderful. And here's that aggressive move. Good timing in the long stretch at Woodbine, a race that has produced some very important winners and been very, very significant Grade 1 race, going 1 turn mile for runners. He beats bunches of Grade 1 winners in here, and another wonderful performance. Again, Kieran was, I believe, told us during the Saratoga meet that the mile was his target this year. He has certainly took the second step on the way back, beats a very competitive field with some very classy runners in it. He's just got that much more class. I'm enjoying this story to no end. I really am. It's just, it's rare.
Now, we talked about Lear's Princess getting 7 pounds from Rags to Riches. Shakespeare was getting 7 pounds from the runner-up, Kip DeVille, who ran very well.
Yeah.
Galantis ran well to be third. I truly feel when it comes to Remarkable News, he's got to learn to settle a little bit better. Because, when he won, what was it, the Firecracker? I don't have it right in front of me.
Okay.
He stole the race. But when you get into top quality mile races on the proper surface, the pace is going to be pretty legitimate. And Angel Penn has got to teach him to settle a little bit to do his best. Be Crew,
I would
last
say,
year's
I don't know.
winner was
Yeah.
6th. Sky Conqueror, whom my partner made another wise choice in not making a cigar bet, was 8th. What's next for Shakespeare? Well, everybody thinks it's a gimme. It's the Breeders' Cup Mile. Better stay tuned and listen
good.
to Kieran
I wanna hear
McLaughlin.
it, yeah.
Congratulations, an absolutely terrific performance. Earlier on, last Sunday, north of the border, they ran the Summer Stakes for 2-year-olds, and from the far outside was number 9 Prussian. 5-2 in the line. I told you we had no chance to get 5-2.
Absolutely, yeah.
If we could get 8-5, I would spend all of my allowance that my wife gives me on this horse. Well, he went post-road as 1-2 for Bill Mott and Kent DeSormo. What I didn't like here early on is he really didn't settle as much as I would like. I don't think he settled as much as Kent wanted him to, or Billy wanted him to. This is the perfect post. If you're ever going to relax, it's going to be when you're outside of rivals. And Kent made the statement that it was good that we were clear of the field on the outside. But as you can see, he's really tugging at Kent.
Absolutely.
Now, folks, he's a mile better than these horses. And he's going to win by a length and a quarter, and it's certainly wonderful to win. And congratulations to Billy. But I'm not sure it was quite what they were looking
Well,
for.
probably not. I mean, Bill, this was a pretty dazzling debut at Saratoga in his last start. Bill has tried to win this race for a few years, and he finally gets it done here. I think a lot of this, guys, it's not the first time that I've seen a big debut winner, I won't say struggle in his second start, but maybe not go as much forward as we'd like. That doesn't bother me maybe as much as it does Mark. I'm hoping that at some point this year or early next, we get to see this son of Danzig go on dirt. Although he has a marvelous grass pedigree, his family mark is Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe. He's going to be able to run all day, I think. But if you're going to have a bad day, it's nice to do it in a $250,000 graded race on
still win.
on the grass at Woodbine and still win.
But, the first half went in 46.
It wasn't smooth.
When he kind of fought DeSormo.
Yeah.
The second half was 49-1.
Well.
Now, he beat a couple of colts who were previously unbeaten in Briarwood Circle, in your round. And it actually might be a perfect stepping stone to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, but it just wasn't quite
all
what
I
I
can
was
say
looking
is
for.
I would like to see in a 2-year-old who kind of knows that he's good, I would like to see a lot of high energy, and I'd like to have something that you've got to teach down rather than put something there that's just not there.
Right,
So if he's
right.
if he's on the engine as a young 2-year-old who thinks, boy, what am I doing walking around with these guys? I'm okay with it. But I agree with Mark. To get to the top, he's got to learn his lessons. But who's teaching him? Bill Mott, huh?
That's right. And sooner or later he's going to learn them. Will it be in time for the Breeders'
Sure,
Cup Juvenile
yeah,
Turf?
yeah.
We'll find out. Prussian paid $3. Shakespeare paid $5.90. Not terribly exciting for the two horses that I liked last week. And I rarely talk to you about betting on this show. But folks, there is one way to make lemonade out of lemons. When you got two relatively short price horses, keep something in mind. A win parlay is not a bad way to go. Even though they paid $3 and $5.90 respectively, if you had made a win parlay, for every $20 you bet, the return was $88.50. And that's basically turning a $3 winner and a $5.90 winner into an $8.85 winner is basically what it is. Now, gentlemen who enjoyed tremendous success last weekend, winning the Gazelle with Lear's Princess and the Woodbine Mile with Shakespeare, we like him. One of the nicest guys in the game, Mr. Kieran McLaughlin. And yesterday, I had a chance to sit down and chat with Kieran about his terrific weekend. Kieran, welcome back to Down the Stretch, and congratulations on a terrific weekend.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Let's begin with Lear's Princess, a more professional effort with the addition of blinkers in capturing the gazelle. Kieran, talk to our audience about this performance, if you would.
Well, Lear's Princess is a very honest. She tries hard every time on any surface, winning her first race on the poly, her next two on the turf, and then we switched to the Coaching Club Oaks and tried the dirt, and she ran a great second to Octave. But in the race, she jumped off her lead late in the race. About the 16th post, she switched to her left lead, and then she switched back to her right lead, and she just missed. So we came back in the Alabama, and she really didn't do anything wrong. She finished second, another very good second in a grade 1. But Barcoa came back, and he just thought a set of blinkers might help stay focused and might help him a little bit. So we decided to put the blinkers on, this race with in the Gazelle against Rags to Riches. And it just all worked out great, and she ran super and won her grade 1 that she much deserved.
And Kieran, what did Abar have to say to you after the race?
He was just very happy and thought that the blinkers helped. And, before the race, I don't give instructions that much. I give them my thoughts and let them ride the race. But he was talking about getting to the outside of Rags to Riches, and I said, I don't think we're ever going to be outside of her. We're in the 1 hole, and she's in the 5 hole, and Johnny likes to keep her out in the clear because in the Belmont, she was in the 4 pass the whole way. And I said, but just ride your race. And he rode a perfect race and made the right decision because at the half-mile pole, I thought he was maybe going to have to come up inside of those fillies, and he decided to wait. Rags to Riches made her move, and he angled out and made his move with her and ended up, winning. Obviously did everything right.
Kieran, you beat one of the finest 3-year-old fillies we've seen in quite a few years in Rags to Riches. How did it feel?
It was mixed emotions because Todd is a very close friend, and his family and his team of people. And, a lot of people would love to beat Todd Fletcher, but I'm not one of them. He's a good friend, and I hated to beat such a quality filly. But on the other hand, that's the sport we chose and the game we're in, so it felt great to win. But, I think that she ran her race, and giving us 7 pounds might have cost her a half a length and made the difference. So it all worked out for us on the day.
Kieran, how did Lear's Princess come out of the Gazelle?
Great. Better than the last 2 races, so she seems to be doing well. I sent her back up to my brother Neil at Saratoga and his wife Trish, and Rob Massey gets on her every day, and they're doing a great job all summer, so I didn't want to take her down here too early before the Breeders' Cup. We left her at Saratoga, so she's back there training.
Kieran, is the distaff next for her?
Yes, it is.
I've got kind of a, out of left field type of question here, which I come up with every now and then. It's going to be difficult to take away the 3-year-old filly championship from Rags to Riches, even though you beat her in the Gazelle. Kieran, has there been any discussion between you and the West Point folks about trying to capture maybe a turf championship by going to the filly and mare turf?
No talk at all. She's better on the dirt, and she's proven on the dirt now in 3 races, 2 seconds, and a win in a grade 1. And, the championship is there, and Rags to Riches probably will get it, but we have to give our filly our best chance to win a Breeders' Cup race, and we feel like it's a distaff.
All right, let's now talk about your turf star, that being Shakespeare. Kieran, first, please remind our audience, Shakespeare was away from the races from October of 2005 until this past August at Saratoga. What kept him sidelined?
He was training with Bill Mott, who did a great job with him, winning his first 5 races of his life, and he developed a bit of a tendon injury. And most horses do not return off tendons. And I give Bill Mott the credit for stopping on him early enough and not being greedy and pushing on and trying to run him one more time and then having to retire the horse because of a tendon. So he stopped on him. They sent him home. and Des Ryan with Delridge Farm own half of them. They gave him a lot of time and plenty of time, more time than most people do, and it's paid off very well. We picked him up April 15th and trained on toward the August 2nd allowance race, thinking that we would use that mile as a prep to go further next time. But he impressed me so much by going 22 seconds the last quarter and winning going a mile. We decided to go to the Woodbine mile and keep him at a mile for now.
Karen, I mentioned on last week's show, because I had liked Shakespeare so very much in the Woodbine Mile, that I thought at Saratoga, in the comeback, when he ran for you for the first time, he was probably, 150 to 200 pounds overweight that day and still won it. Would that be somewhat accurate?
Nah, that's a little bit. He's just a big, heavy, round horse. That's his makeup. He's made that way. But I would say that he was, 30 to 50 pounds lighter going to the Woodbine Mile.
Well, let's talk about the Woodbine Mile as our audience watches it. He's number 3 in the yellow and brown diamond silks. Karen, what a performance. Talk about it if you would.
Yes, he's a special horse. I mean, he's a top shelf horse, and I've had a couple of special horses, luckily, these last year or two, in Invincible and Henny Hughes and Dazzle. But Shakespeare's one of the few horses I feel so confident that if they just put a starting gate up there and put him in it, he's going to find a way to get to the finish line first. Whether it's 8 furlongs or 12 furlongs or anything in between, he's that special, just a serious horse. But Garrett rode a great race down the backside. He made a decision to move to the inside a little bit going into the turn, and it all just went perfect for us, and he kicked home and finished very strongly again. The announcer kind of missed him till late, but he was always moving well up the inside.
I know that Garrett, in some of his post-race comments, talked about how originally he feared that a mile might be a little short for him, but Shakespeare proved him wrong.
Yes, exactly. We for sure he thought he might want to go a little further, and he's probably right. If there was a mile and a quarter Breeders' Cup turf race, that's probably where we'd be going. But there's not. There's a mile and a half. So we might pre-enter to both of them and just have our options open, because the tight turns at Monmouth going a mile, if you happen to draw post 12 to 14, you would lessen your chances of winning because of being so wide in the tight turns. So we might pre-enter in both the mile and a half and take a look at the competition, because going a mile and a half might be a little easier on it than the mile with a lot of traffic and tight turns.
Karen, can we accurately describe Shakespeare as a horse with a great deal of class?
Yes, a great deal of class and a great deal of talent.
Karen, can he still move forward? Whichever Breeders' Cup race you ultimately decide upon, do you expect him to make another forward move?
Yes, I do, as long as, he continues to train as well as he is. We feel like he could move forward again, yes.
And Kieran, at this point, and obviously we're a number of weeks away from the Breeders' Cup, but who else from the stable is being pointed for this year's Breeders' Cup at Monmouth Park?
Shakis, who won the Bernard Baruch, is going to run in the Shadwell Mile October 6th, and should he run well, he's a possibility. We were second in the Matron with our Monk, and she's a possibility. She'll run back in the Frazette or the Alcibiades on the 5th and 6th weekend. And Taboo is going to run back in the Frazette, AP&D filly, closely related to Rags to Riches and Dazzle. And if she would rebound and win the Frazette, she would end up in the Breeders' Cup.
Karen, what's going on with Mokhtarah, who suffered that, brutally difficult trip toward the end of the Saratoga meet?
Well, we were pointing for the Flower Bowl next week, but unfortunately she has a mild setback, a little crack in a pattern, and we're going to end up sending her home, and she's going to be retired.
Well, that's a shame. But, Karen, again, all congratulations on a superb weekend. Lear's Princess ran wonderfully, and the old boy Shakespeare is absolutely on top of his game. Congratulations to you and your staff. Thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch, and we'll look forward to talking with you again very soon.
All right, thank you, Mark. Thanks very much.
Karen McLaughlin, ladies and gentlemen, the trainer of Lear's Princess and Shakespeare. Well, bad news about Mockdara, obviously. Interesting news about Shakespeare.
I agree, yeah.
Pre-enter in both races. I've been a Shakespeare fan since day one. I've watched all of his races. I'm not sure a mile and a half, and he's won at a mile, is quite his game. But Karen makes a great point. You go to the Breeders' Cup Mile, you draw a bad post position, man, are you up against it.
It's such a seriously intense race, too. If, maybe on this day, because you actually made the mile and a half remark before the Breeders' Cup turf, that particular fall. I remember that. But he's older and wiser and not any slower. So maybe this will work.
Thank you to Karen very much. And we are up to our final break on this morning's, final official show of summer. When Michael and I return, we will welcome in local owner Don Lucarelli, who later this afternoon will be running octave in the $750 million cotillion at Philadelphia Park. As we go to this break, I mentioned earlier, not only did Kieran have a great last weekend, so did Barclay Tagg, winning the Futurity with Tail of a Cotty, beating me in the Ashley T. Cole with Dave. Here is the Noble Damsel, and he'll be represented by number 9 Dance Away Capote, who was 9-1 off her 5th place finish in the Ballston Spa. So we'll take a look at the Noble Damsel going to the break, and Michael and I will be back with Don Lucarelli right after these messages.
They're off. Pomfret and Bayou's Lassie. Bayou's Lassie to the lead. Rahi's Appeal sent after the lead from the inside now. Bayou's Lassie and Eck. On the inside, Rahi's Appeal runs up in second. On the far outside, Pomfret right up there running in third. Followed closely by Astronomia, who's fourth. Amansara gets a good spot early. A comfortable 5th on the inside. A break of 5. Swap Flipperoo is 6th. Sky High Flyer is 7th. Silver Charades is 8th. Dance Away Capote is 9th. Fantastic Cheryl, the last of 10. Opening quarter, 22 4/5 seconds. They're moving right along here. Long shot, Rahi's Appeal is the leader with 5 furlongs to go. Bayou's Lassie just off her flank, sitting second. On the far outside, Pomfret runs in third. Amansara's now 4th, followed by Astronomia, 5th. A break of 6 to Swap Flipperoo. Down on the inside of Sky High Flyer, then farther back, Silver Charades, better than a dozen from the lead. Dance Away Capote now being asked to pick it up, but she's got a lot to do. Fantastic Cheryl trails the field after a 46 flat half mile. Bayou's Lassie is still the leader. Pomfret second. Astronomia poised on the outside third. Amansara, who's had a good trip so far, just in behind the lead. Now 4th. Dance Away Capote has made a huge move on the far turn and is taking aim at the leaders in the far outside, and they're coming into the final furlong. And here is Dance Away Capote up to take the lead and pull away. Pomfret second. On the far outside, Fantastic Cheryl, who's come from last. And from out of it comes Dance Away Capote to win it here. Also well out of it, Fantastic Cheryl to finish second. And then Pomfret third, close for 4th, Silver Charades or Swap Flipperoo.
Hi, I'm Robin Smullen, and I exercise Funny Side, and I'm Barclay Tagg's assistant trainer, and you're watching the OTB Television Network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark Asano. And the Noble Damsel goes to dance away Capote in a big performance, winning by 4.5 over Fantastic Shirl for Barclay Tagg and Alan Garcia. It helps when you don't have to worry about Wait a While, My Typhoon, or Vakari. And she went off at a very nice price.
Yeah.
Now to introduce this morning's final guest, here's Michael.
And we're going to be speaking from on the road to Philadelphia Park, actually, this morning with Don Lucarelli, who's been a guest on this show on a number of occasions because he has one of the top 3-year-old fillies in the land. Her name is Octave, and she's going to run this afternoon in the Grade 2 Cotillion with what Don, I believe, hopes is a step to the Breeders' Cup. So, Don, if you're with us and we've got contact, welcome back to Down the Stretch.
Good morning, Mike and Mark.
Good morning, Donnie.
Very, very good to speak with you, Don. Don, we're going to take 2 looks at the Alabama, and in just a moment, we're just going to take a general look at the race down the backstretch. But what I really want to ask you is, we recall that early last summer, you were pretty insistent about running in the Alabama Stakes, even at that point when Rags to Riches was at the top of her game. So please tell our audience your general thoughts about why you targeted the Alabama under the circumstances of the time.
Well, naturally, the Alabama, to our family, to us, being from this area, is the most important race for a filly throughout the year, really. And naturally, we don't want to avoid anybody, because if you're going to, be considered one of the better horses, you have to race against the best horses. So that's why, naturally, and Jack, my partner, Summers in Saratoga, so naturally he would like to see it too. But for us, it was a little bit of special meaning,
Sure.
being from around the area.
Don, as you go to the Cotillion today, you're coming off 2 races at classic distances, and you're backing up a bit to 1 mile and a 16th. Is that any concern to you this afternoon?
Well, this race, the way on paper, the way it looks, there seems to be a fair amount of speed in here, and naturally we're given some weight considerations away. But I think we're going to have to lay a little further back than she's had to lay in the last 2 or 3 races because of that. So that may be a little different spin for her again. Hopefully she remembers it. And Johnny has the clock working right in his head, and tries to pass in the middle of the stretch somewhere. Because if there's one thing that I worry about, is she doesn't win by a big margin, and she always makes it interesting, which is good for horse racing, but not for my heart. But she has a tendency, once she does get the lead, to sort of hang out there and think that she's did it,
Yeah. Well, Don, we're going to take a second, more focused look now at the end stages of the Alabama Stakes. Pretty easy to say that there were certainly traffic problems at the end. It was a tough situation the last 100 yards, resulting in a steward's inquiry. Tell our audience, if you will, how she came out of that race and your feelings about that particular incident.
Well, Johnny had to make a decision, and it's always a split-second decision, whether to stay outside in the crown of the track and hope it opens up for him, or to go inside. And there was definitely a big enough hole on the inside for him at the time he made the move. And naturally, Calvin is going to do what he needs to do to win the race, and he felt that she was probably a threat. I know he went from left to right whip, and the horse sort of came in and just got so tight that she actually backed herself out of there. And in a way, thank God, we're glad she did, because it isn't about one race, it's about the future.
Yes.
And, she ended up getting a couple cuts out of it, but nothing deep enough to jeopardize her training or her start today. And my thoughts are that, if she was able to maintain second, that they would have definitely, maybe took a different look at it. And but since, they felt that, at that point, Lear's Princess didn't beat Lady Joni, so what are they going to accomplish by putting us second and putting up Lear's Princess? They did the right thing in that case, from a judge's standpoint.
Don, this afternoon at Philadelphia Park, what have you got to see happen to go to the Breeders' Cup Distaff? What will you be looking for today?
Well, I think at this stage of the game, she needs to come out of it clean.
Okay.
And run a good race. I mean, we don't want to see something where we need a scoper and there became a problem or anything. She just has to try to run a race, and at this, she doesn't like being on the inside. So really, the one post is not her most advantageous draw. We just got to hope that Johnny can find a spot to get her off and get her in the clear. And with the speed in the race, hopefully he'll have that opportunity on a few different occasions. And as long as she runs her race, then naturally we'd love to see her win. Which I feel definitely she is in the class of the race. It's just a matter of she doesn't seem to have the best racing luck, but that isn't the over determining factor. I mean, as long as she runs her race and come up with a win or a decent performance, she'll go.
Don, my final question this morning before I send you back to your partner, Mark. Are there thoughts about a campaign as a 4-year-old?
Oh, there's no doubt about that,
wonderful.
Mike. I mean, this horse means too much to us, and, she's just a joy to watch, and it really would be a shame not to run her as a 4-year-old for racing fans and people that have followed her. It's just, she's definitely racing as a 4-year-old as long as she's healthy.
Oh, well, I really salute you and the team on that one. That is great news. Here's Mark.
Don, good morning.
Good morning, Mark.
Just a couple of quick questions. You mentioned earlier, she got cut up a little bit. She was banged and bruised a little bit coming out of the Alabama, but how's she coming up to the cotillion? Todd made special mention of the fact that he thought she was working particularly well.
Yeah, her last couple works have been in 1 minute and 2/5, and then the last one last Sunday, I believe it was 1 minute and 1/5. And as you guys know, it's how you gallop out, how you did it. And she galloped out very well, and the exercise writer said she handled it very good. So he's naturally pretty confident going into this. And she didn't get very body sore at all. We do have a therapist who continually works on her, and she always has had a massage therapist for electro waves, so her muscle tone should be in good order.
Well, Don, as always, thanks so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch, and all the best with Octave in this afternoon's cotillion. We hope she runs well for you and comes out of it well, and we'll look forward to speaking with you again very soon.
Thank you very much, guys.
Don
Thank you,
Lucarelli,
Don,
ladies and
good
gentlemen, the local owner of Octave and some wonderful stakes races around the country.
Good day today, yeah.
Fortunately, no scratches out of either the Brooklyn or the Gallant Bloom right now here in New York. I have to tell you, I simply don't understand why 8 days apart you card the Brooklyn and the Jockey Club Gold Cup. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's a good thing any given Saturday is running this afternoon, and this is an important race for him. He looks like he, lays over the field, but his final stepping stone to the Breeders' Cup Classic. Final reminder for those of you who would like to correspond with us here at Down the Stretch, through the United States Postal Service, Down the Stretch, Mark and Mike, Capital District OTB, 510 Smith, Schenectady, 12305, or electronically at viewermail at capitalotb.com. Time to thank all the folks who helped get this week's program on the air. Dan Hayes directed, Pete Persico and Pat Peretta, our associate producer Julie Hoxie, and this morning's special guests, Don Lucarelli, Kieran McLaughlin, and one more time, attorney Paul Darrow Hanassian. I hope I did a pretty good job.
Paul.
Thanks so much to all. Enjoy this good weekend of racing.
Oh, it really is an interesting weekend of racing. I agree.
All over. We've got Grasshopper in Louisiana. We've got the return of the Massachusetts Handicap. We've got the races here in New York. The Brave Raj for 2-year-old fillies at Calder. Couple of pretty interesting 2-year-old fillies in there. So we've got some good races. So enjoy all the racing action from coast to coast here at Capital. Have a wonderful weekend and a terrific upcoming week. And Michael and I will see you next week.